Grandpa, I saw Grandma walk into the Bayou Palms Motor Lodge with a few men in suits. My grandson's voice cut through the Houston rain, hissing through the phone like a blade straight into my chest. 40 years of marriage, every vow, every meal, every night she lay still beside me like a cooled-off habit collapsed with a single phone call. I looked around our familiar kitchen, still warm from the breakfast I'd made her. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered, the black puddle spreading across the floor like something in me had just died. The photo my grandson sent didn't lie. The blue coat, the brown purse, and our license plate. But what froze my heart was the silver 40th anniversary bracelet sitting quietly in the drawer. I turned off the lights, opened the basement door, the place that always creaked when she went to her appointment, and in the weak yellow light, my wife sat there, calmly knitting. If she was here, then who was at that motel? I took a deep breath, shook the tremor from my hand, and went down one step at a time, my heartbeat slow but steady. Tonight, I would face the truth even if it killed me. If you're still here, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more hearts, and if it moved you, give it a like so others can find it too. My name is Harold Hank Coleman, 73, born and raised in Independence Heights, Houston, Texas. I was a production supervisor at Bayport Steel and Pipe more than 30 years on that floor, from a sweaty young hand to retirement with calloused palms and a bent back. I married Laverne, who once worked as an accounting secretary at the plant, in the spring of 1979. She was Southern gentle, beautiful, quiet, modest, careful with every word. We've been through it all. Houston summers without air conditioning, hurricane seasons with the power out, 2 brushes with the mortgage, and 2 kids, Tanya and Reggie. Now Tanya lives in Dallas as a head nurse, and Reggie runs a small gym in the city. Laverne and I have 2 grandkids, Jaden, 19, and Amari, 15, the last light in my life. Our marriage cooled more than a decade ago. Laverne said I snored too loud to sleep, then moved into a separate bedroom. After that, a 6-room house held little more than 2 daily sentences: good morning and good night. I knew we weren't what we used to be, but betrayal never crossed my mind. I thought silence was a kind of peace, never realized it was quiet surrender. That afternoon, Houston poured sky gray like lead. I had just poured coffee when the phone rang. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something, but you have to keep calm." Jaden's voice had a slight tremble. I figured it was school, but when he spoke, it felt like my blood drained out. I saw Grandma at the Bayou Palms Motor Lodge. Not with just one person, there were a few men in suits, like they'd just left a meeting. I swallowed hard. "Jaden, are you sure?" She said she had a cardiology appointment with Dr. Turner today. "I'm sure, Pop. I was driving home from school, cut through Bel Air, and I saw your license plate clear as day." I opened my phone. The screen filled with a photo. Laverne in the blue coat I gave her last Christmas, carrying the old brown purse, standing beside 5 men in suits. In the background, the neon sign read, Bayou Palms Motor Lodge, weekly rates. I wanted an explanation, but my mind was blank. I went to the drawer where Laverne keeps her jewelry. The silver bracelet engraved H&L 1979, our 40th anniversary gift, was there, cold and still, like evidence. She once told me, "I'll never take it off, unless I'm no longer your wife." I stood in the kitchen a long time. The wall clock ticked slow, beating along with rain on the window. Something inside me caught fire, not anger, but a hollow ache. I walked the house. Everything was in place. Her teacup on the table, a light coat on the chair, the front door locked from inside. But one thing was off. The basement carried that steady, rocking chair creak, like someone gently swaying. Every time Laverne went to her appointment, I'd hear it. She said it was the neighbor's cat slipping through the small window. I used to believe that. Not today. I opened the basement door. Damp wood and must hit me. A weak yellow bulb threw long shadows on the stained wall. In the corner, on my mother's old rocker, Laverne, or someone who looked exactly like her, sat knitting with headphones on, her head tilted to the music. She didn't look up. Short gray hair, the slope of her shoulders, the slight tremble in her hands, identical to the woman I've lived with for 40 years. I stalled a few seconds, then tried, "Laverne?" No response. The headphones must have been loud. I stepped closer, heart thudding with each step. A few feet away, I asked softly, "Aren't you going to your cardiology appointment?" She took off the headphones, startled, and turned. That face, familiar and strange at once. Her voice was steady. "Oh, Dr. Turner canceled, so I stayed home to knit. What are you doing down here?" The voice, the gestures, even the smile, pure Laverne. But I noticed her right wrist was bare. No silver bracelet. My chest felt heavy. I tested her. "I've been thinking about your mama's pecan pie. Remember the secret?" She smiled. "Of course, use a little extra brown sugar for deeper sweetness, and toast the pecans longer." Wrong. Laverne's mama always used white sugar and added a splash of bourbon vanilla. Never changed. The woman in front of me had just failed the simplest memory check. I forced a smile. "Right. Brown sugar is better. I'll make some coffee." I went upstairs, moving slow while my heart pounded. In the kitchen, I refreshed the family locator app Reggie installed after my heart scare. The screen lit. Laverne Coleman location. Home. Independence Heights. Houston. Her phone was here. She or someone was here. So who was at the motel? I didn't rush. I pulled Jaden's number and texted, "Go back to the motel. See if the car's still there. Don't go inside, just look." Message sent. I glanced at the basement door, cracked open. The rocker kept creaking. I clenched my fist. 40 years together, I thought nothing about Laverne could surprise me. Tonight, I knew I was wrong. I flipped off the house lights, leaving a single hallway lamp toward the basement. Then I took a breath and opened the door. The creak stopped mid-swing, then silence. I set my foot on the first wooden step. My palms were ice cold, my heart beat slow and clear like a funeral drum. Houston's night felt like stone. I went down, step by step, until I heard her steady breathing, back still to me. I stopped and called softly, "Laverne." No answer. I scanned the damp room and thought of my younger self, those years I mistook silence for love and routine for proof of happiness. Now, in this dim light, I saw only one truth. Every silence hides a secret, and I, Harold Coleman, would open it no matter the cost to the marriage I'd spent my life trying to preserve. I stood there a while, keeping my breath even. The woman kept knitting, calm, as if nothing were off. Her hands moved in smooth loops, the yarn wrapping the needles quiet, rhythmic, unnerving. When I shifted, the rocker groaned in time. The yellow bulb washed over the face I'd known 40 years, and somehow it felt foreign. I looked closer. The seated posture, the slight hunch, the habit of stirring tea 3 times counterclockwise, everything matched Laverne. Only one thing didn't: the eyes. Not the steady calm I knew, but a hollow look. When she glanced up, those eyes didn't truly see me, only their own reflection in the dim light. I swallowed and kept my tone even. "Want me to make tea?" She looked up and smiled gently. "Go ahead. I'm coming up." The voice was flawless, warm, soft, like I was talking to my wife. But my gut said something was very wrong. I left the basement, stepping slowly. In the kitchen I was out of breath. Sweat cold down my back, though rain cooled the air. I pretended to look for a screwdriver to check the garage door. It was still locked, no pry marks, but on the shelf by the tools I saw a small burgundy wallet. Not Laverne's. She likes big, soft leather wallets in light brown. This one was small, modern, bright silver clasp, and I'd never seen it here. I opened it. Inside was neat as a display. Some cash, a deep red lipstick, an old compact, and an ID card. Under the yellow light, the name popped. Mariella Knox. The photo made me stop cold. That face, the face in my basement. Same fine lines at the mouth, the crow's feet, except for one tiny difference, a mole on the left ear. Laverne doesn't have that. The birth year matched Laverne's 1956. I turned to the back pocket, hands shaking. A stack of bank transfer slips, tucked in a small plastic sleeve. All identical, same amount, $40. Sender, Laverne Coleman. Recipient, Mariella Knox. Dates lined up perfectly every Tuesday and Thursday for more than half a year. My heart hammered. The pieces locked together in a way that scared me. I pulled a folded note from another slot. The handwriting was careful, so familiar my chest clenched. Laverne's hand. It read, "Hank on the porch, wear headphones, back at 4:30. L." I read it 3 times. The L at the end stretched oddly Laverne's signature, or someone trying to imitate it. I sat on the stool by the shelf, chest heavy as lead. If the Laverne downstairs was someone else, where was the real Laverne? My phone buzzed and I jumped. "Jaden," I answered. He kept his voice low. "Pop," I went back. "The red Impala is still there." I asked the front desk, pretended I'm a relative who lost track of her. The clerk said her name's Miss Celeste. Room 12. A regular usually comes Tuesdays and Thursdays, with a few men in blue suits. I went still, eyes on the wall. Every detail matched what I'd just found. "Thanks, son. Come home now. Don't go back inside." I hung up and stood. Questions crashed in. Why was Laverne sending money to someone named Mariella? Why did they look identical? Why pretend to be home while she was with other men? I walked back to the kitchen. Laverne or Mariella was rinsing the kettle. She turned and smiled. "Tea or coffee?" I was thinking of baking a peach cobbler. Jaden loves that. I stared at her. Jaden hates peach cobbler. He only loves his mom's walnut brownies. Laverne, his grandma, never forgets. I set the burgundy wallet on the table. The sound cracked the quiet. "Who are you?" I asked, low and slow. She froze, tightened her grip on the kettle, then let go. A thin, sharp smile cut across her mouth. "So, you figured it out?" I said nothing. Her eyes slid to the wallet, then back to me. After a long beat, she took off, her headphones. Her voice dropped lower, harder, missing Laverne's softness. "I'm Mariella Knox, Laverne's twin sister." The air seemed to harden. I had to grab the counter. "Twin sister?" I repeated, each word heavy. "Yes. We met 2 years ago through a Lone Star Genomics DNA test. She was searching for relatives. I was looking for origins. The results said we matched. We started talking. Laverne told me about the cold marriage, about you, the quiet husband who only worked and stayed silent. Heat rose in my face. "You're telling me Laverne hired you?" Mariella lifted a shoulder, like it was nothing. "That's right. She needed to be home whenever she went out, so you wouldn't suspect. I just had to knit, pour tea, do little things. She paid me $40 a session. It was enough for me." I sat, hands clamped on my knees. The picture of the real Laverne, my wife, flickered. While I thought she was at her appointment, she paid someone to play her. Mariella's tone softened. "Mr. Hank, I didn't mean you harm. I just worked." She wanted freedom. Maybe you don't know, but she felt trapped. She said with you, every day felt like a steel cage. I met her eyes, hurt and anger twisting in me. "And this is how you help her escape?" She gave a dry smile. "Escape or not doesn't matter. She pays. I work. I've got debts, my own life. 2 lonely seniors, the only difference is she has money and I don't." Silence swelled. The kitchen felt too small, the light too bright, spotlighting my shame. Every word was a cut through 40 shared years. I stood, forcing my voice flat. Answer one more thing. Where is she now? Mariella shrugged. At the motel, like every Tuesday and Thursday, with people who pay more than $40. The words dizzy spun me. I grabbed the counter not to fall. She didn't flinch. She reached for the wallet. I held it back. I'm keeping this, I said, voice cold as steel. Something flashed in her eyes, half challenge, half pity. Keep it. You'll learn soon your Laverne isn't the woman you think. She turned and went downstairs. The rocker creaked again, steady, taunting. I stood there a long time in the yellow light. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to sit and cry like a boy. Instead, I opened the locator app. The blinking dot still put Laverne at home. I muttered. It's all right, Hank. Let her think she's ahead. I reread the note from Mariella's wallet. Hank on the porch, back at 4:30. It was already after 8 p.m. If their routine held, then... I pressed my lips tight, pocketed the wallet, and headed back down. The yellow bulb flickered. The rocker kept time, like it was waiting. I knew I was about to hear the next truth no matter how much it hurt. I sat across from Mariella in the basement, under the yellow bulb of an old ceiling fixture. Rain pounded the tiny window, ticking with the wall clock each second a needle. She finished a few loops, set the needles down, eyes flat as still water. Any more questions, Mr. Hank? She asked no more soft edges, just steady, practiced calm. Arms crossed, I kept my voice even. The cardio schedule twice a week, what is it really? Mariella tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, and curled a tired smile. Business travelers, from Dallas down or Austin over. Middle-aged men, well-dressed, soft-spoken. She said all they wanted was attention and quiet. That was enough. My chest tightened, I couldn't draw a full breath. You're saying my Laverne chose to earn with the gentleness you forgot she ever had. Mariella cut in, ice cold. She leaned back, arms folded. She told me once she hit $80,000, she would disappear. Leave the life you and the kids made her feel smothered in. Then she stared straight at me. I only helped my sister. I sat there a long time, head pounding like a slow hammer. Finally, I asked, voice low and rough, you know everything I do, how I walk, eat, even talk. How? Mariella laughed dry and brief. Laverne told me everything. You set the paper on the kitchen table at 6 a.m. Drink coffee with 2 sugars and a slice of lemon, not cream. You only trust people who look you in the eye. You like standing on the back porch where the freight train rolls by every afternoon, and if someone folds the tablecloth wrong, you'll fix it yourself. See? I know it all. Each detail was a blade. I shook not from fear, but from the feeling of being stripped open. She told you. All that? I croaked. Mariella tilted her head. She said I had to know it all so you wouldn't suspect. So when you looked at me, you'd still think you were looking at your wife. A chill ran down my spine. I clenched my hands to stay calm. Do you know where she is right now? Probably still at the motel. But you don't need me anymore. You've got enough to go on. I stood to leave. One thought in my head. Call 911. End this nightmare. Bring witnesses. The law. I'd gone a few steps when Mariella called after me, voice sharp as a knife. Mr. Hank, in 40 years, did you ever ask yourself what you really knew about the person next to you? I stopped, feet rooted. She went on, steady. You loved her, but you never listened, never asked what she wanted. She told me the worst part was waking every morning, seeing you there silent, kind, and far away. So if you feel betrayed today, maybe, ask yourself who broke faith first. I spun to answer then. The light snapped off. A rush of air behind me then, wham! A blow like the sky fell. I went face down. My head rang, vision smeared, and I only glimpsed Mariella backing away with something in her hand, a wrench, maybe a rubber mallet. The room went black. Rain roared into the ringing in my ears. After that, nothing. When I came to, antiseptic burned my nose. Bright white lights made me wince. The ceiling wasn't familiar. I was in Memorial Hermann. My head was wrapped, neck sore, an IV in my hand. Two women by the bed. Tanya, my daughter, and Laverne, or the woman who looked exactly like her. Tanya burst into tears when my eyes opened. "Oh my God, Dad. Police said you fell down the stairs. Why weren't you careful?" I pushed up, voice scraped raw. "It wasn't a fall. I was attacked." Laverne, the one wearing the silver bracelet, squeezed my hand, eyes wet. "What are you saying?" "I came as soon as I heard. The doctor said you fell in the basement and had minor blood loss." I stared at her wrist. The real bracelet engraved H and L 1979 gleamed cold. I spoke slowly, each word clear. "No, I was assaulted, and I want to report it." Tanya froze. Laverne went pale. A moment later, the door opened. A woman in a blazer walked in, badge reading, "Detective Serena Alvarez, HPD." Her voice was calm, firm. "Mr. Coleman, I'm the lead on your case. We've processed your home. There are signs of a heavy object, blood near the stairs, and a neighbor's camera shows headlights leaving your garage about 7 p.m. Can you tell me what happened?" I told her everything. Jaden's call, the Bayou Palms Motel, the Laverne look-alike, the burgundy wallet, the $40 transfers, and the note, Hank on the porch, back at 4:30. At the name Mariella Knox, Laverne exhaled hard, tears spilling. "Enough, Hank, please." Her voice broke. "Yes, there's a Mariella, but she's not a stranger. I met her through a DNA test. I only wanted to help. She's poor, has no one." I looked her in the eye. "Help? By paying her $40 to play you?" Laverne dropped her head, shoulders shaking. "I didn't think it would go this far. I just needed time. I did wrong, but it's not what you think." Detective Alvarez scribbled, eyes on Laverne. "Mrs. Laverne, why did you need the money? These regular $40 transfers, this isn't just charity." Laverne lifted her face, voice cracking, "Because Amari needed treatment. His knee injury insurance didn't cover all of it. I didn't want to burden the kids. Then, Reggie's gym nearly went under, so I used my Social Security to help. I thought I'd do it for a few weeks, earn a little, and stop." Tanya covered her mouth, tears falling. "Mom, why didn't you tell us?" Laverne didn't answer. She just cried quietly. The room fell still, save for Alvarez's pen. She spoke gently but clear. "We'll pull more evidence, motel desk footage, bank records, and prints at your home. But first, Mr. Hank, you need rest." The blow was severe, luckily just a minor head injury. I nodded and looked at the woman I once believed I knew best. She sat small, clutching the blanket. The silver bracelet still shone, but to me, it felt more like a cold chain than a symbol of love. When Alvarez left, Tanya held my hand, trembling. "Dad, I'll stay tonight. Don't worry. Everything will come to light." I only answered, "Okay." But in my head, I knew light doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes, when you shine it too deep into the darkness of someone you love, what you see makes you stop recognizing yourself. The night at Memorial Hermann felt as long as a lifetime. The heart monitor kept beeping, steady, while the rain hit the window. I lay there, head wrapped, staring at the light on the ceiling, feeling like I'd just woken from a bad dream while my spirit was still stuck in a nightmare. When Tanya fell asleep in the chair, I closed my eyes, and the past pulled me back. I remembered my younger years, when life was just Bayport steel and pipe. I worked the morning shift up at 4:30 a.m. A quick wash, coffee in the old pot, then drove to the plant while it was still dusky. On a good day, I didn't get home until 8 p.m., my body smelling like oil and smoke. Back then, Laverne worked as a school secretary. Lighter work, steady hours. I used to joke, "You work with your hands. I work with my back." She'd smile, pour me a glass of water, then quietly rub my shoulders every night. When Tanya and Reggie were born, Laverne quit to raise them. From then on, every bill sat on my shoulders. I didn't complain, I just worked. We weren't flush in those years, but the house was warm. I still remember opening the door at night, seeing Laverne holding the baby, dinner in the air like every bit of tired just fell away. But time changes everything. In 2009, the doctor said I had high blood pressure. 2 years later, one morning on the floor, my chest tightened a quick, sharp pain that drenched me in sweat. The doctor called it an early warning. In 2013, I took early retirement on a package. I thought leaving early would be good more time with my wife. I didn't know it would start a quiet distance. Our income dropped by more than half. I counted every bill. I grumbled about the power charges. Laverne grew quieter, went out less. We started sleeping in separate rooms after a fight about my snoring. I remember that night. She gathered her pillows, said softly, "I need sleep," and never came back to the old bed. From then on, we were two tenants under one roof, two parallel worlds. Morning, good morning. Night, good night. Between those two lines stretched a silence as long as 10 years of marriage. We each kept a separate fund. I took my pension, paid the basics, insurance. She had savings from her working years and a little dividend from old stocks. I thought it was normal. Two older people, two routines, two quiet corners. Looking back now, that silence is what opened the door to the dark. The next morning, Alvarez came back to the hospital. Her voice was even and professional, but I saw some mercy in her eyes. "Mr. Hank, we reviewed Mrs. Laverne's bank card activity. There are irregular transfers, more going out than her Social Security can cover." I nodded, no longer surprised. I figured. That afternoon, while Tanya went to get food, Laverne visited me alone. She looked worn out, thinner, but tried to stay calm. She carried a paper bag, chicken soup, and a few slices of bread. "Eat a little. You'll need strength to go home." I looked at the tray, then looked straight at her. "Can you tell the truth now?" She set the bag down and sat across from me. The white light washed her pale face. After a long pause, she spoke quietly. "At first, it was just one outing. A friend at church recommended. A light service, nothing illegal. A widowed businessman from Dallas needed a companion for an event. $700 for one evening. I thought I could cover some of your prescriptions and be done." She lowered her head, voice thin. But then, they came, back. The appointments got regular. A small group, polite, discreet. They called me Miss Celeste. They paid well, asked for nothing but presents, some conversation, a few dinners. I thought I was in control. Then one of them suggested private service. I was scared, but I needed money. That's when it started. I sat still. I don't know which hurt more, the betrayal, or realizing I'd lived beside someone so long I no longer knew who she was. What do you think? Can silence kill a marriage faster than betrayal? Tell me what you feel." She went on, eyes wet. "To avoid suspicion, I hired Mariella. $40 a session. I just needed someone at home so you'd believe I was at my cardiology appointment. I thought I was clever. Turns out I was foolish." I didn't answer. Inside me, anger and shame mixed together, not only because of what she did, but because I saw I'd turned into an invisible old man. My life was work, bills, then the evening news. I never asked if my wife was lonely. I thought providing and caring were enough. Turns out she needed to be seen and heard. Alvarez arrived near dusk with a few forms. "We need both of you to give formal statements. In the meantime, please don't let anyone be alone." Tanya came right away, decided to take me to her place in Dallas for now. Reggie, after hearing everything, went quiet. He said he'd take Mom to his house so Mariella couldn't come back. Before we split, I spoke to Laverne in the hospital hallway. She tried to hold my hand, but I eased mine away. "I'm not going to say that word," I said softly. "Divorce?" she asked, voice shaking. I shook my head. "No, but I need time, and the truth, all of it." She only nodded, tears falling like the rain outside. That night, Tanya drove me to her home in Plano. The road was long and quiet. Highway lights slid across the glass, showing the old lines in my hands resting on my knees. "Dad," Tanya finally said, "I don't know what to say. I just feel for both of you." I let out a thin smile. "No need to feel for anyone, honey. Some things, if we'd said them sooner, might not have turned into tragedy." "Do you still love Mom?" she asked. I stared out the window at the rain. "I don't know. I just know that between love and silence, sometimes silence is crueler than betrayal." Tanya squeezed my hand. "Then this time, don't be silent, okay?" We passed rows of houses washed in rain. Streetlights smeared like gold cracks on the dark. I knew morning would change things. But that night, in the rain, I had one thought. Sometimes marriages don't die from lies. They die from long, unbroken quiet. And the price was me, lying here with my head bandaged, looking back at my life like a cooled bar of steel, hard, cold, and out of fire. On my first morning in Plano, I sat by Tanya's window, watching dull sunlight thread through the leftover night rain. Cars hummed in the distance, and fresh coffee filled the kitchen. Everything looked calm, but inside me, every cell was tight like a string. Some wounds aren't on your head, they're in your heart, and there's no bandage big enough. Around 9 o'clock, the phone rang. Detective Serena Alvarez came through clear and steady as always. "Mr. Hank, we have the initial pulls. You should hear this." I sat up straight. Tanya quietly set the coffee down, took my hand. Alvarez began. "Bayou Palms Motor Lodge confirms a regular guest named Miss Celeste, renting room 12 continuously for the past 3 months. On the footage, the woman looks exactly like Mrs. Laverne, arriving with several men in blue suits matching your grandson Jaden's description." I held my breath. Alvarez continued, We also worked with the bank. There's a series of regular transfers, each $40 sent from Mrs. Laverne Coleman's account to Mariella Knox. 6 months of transactions, every Tuesday and Thursday. The timing lines up perfectly with her cardiology visits." Tanya squeezed my hand tighter. A chill ran down my back, but I kept my voice low. "And my assault?" Alvarez answered. "A neighbor's camera across from your house shows a woman in a gray coat, same build as Mrs. Laverne, leaving the back door around 7:05 p.m., the window when you were attacked. The image is blurry, not enough for positive ID. However, we believe it's Mariella Knox." I nodded. Half of me wanted more. The other half wanted to hang up and forget. Alvarez wasn't done. "Mariella's Northline apartment has been searched. Neighbors say she hasn't returned since the night of the incident. Her phone is off, her bank account drained. We've issued a statewide warrant." I asked. "Any other leads?" "Yes," Alvarez said. "This morning, a Greyhound employee in Houston reported a woman around 60, matching the description. Purchased a ticket to Laredo, the final stop near the Mexico border." Tanya let out a small, "Oh God." I shut my eyes and pictured Mariella's cold face in that yellow basement light. She wasn't afraid, wasn't sorry, and likely never planned to stop. 24 hours later, the phone rang again. This time, Alvarez sounded slightly relieved. "We have her, Mr. Hank. In McAllen, just a few miles from the border." I stood up, heart pounding. "Got her? She's alive?" "Alive." She was taken in with a suitcase of cash, more than $40, fake IDs in the name of Laverne Coleman, and a notarized copy of your house deed. We coordinated with CBP just in time. My head buzzed. Alvarez added, "She admitted hitting you with a rubber mallet, said she didn't intend to kill, only to keep you quiet long enough to leave Houston. We're conducting the preliminary interview." That afternoon, I was asked to come to HPD for the briefing. Laverne was there too. She sat across the table in a cream cardigan, face drained. When Alvarez came in, nobody spoke for a few minutes. Then she opened the file and spoke slowly. "Mariella Knox has admitted to attacking Mr. Hank," she said. She wanted to live Laverne's life. In her statement, Mariella said that since meeting Laverne, she felt like she'd found a better version of herself. She envied everything, the house, the name, even you. Laverne covered her mouth, tears spilling. "My God, I got swept up. I truly thought she was my twin. I never imagined she'd do this." Alvarez glanced at her, firm but not harsh. "The DNA story will be audited. Lone Star Genomics confirmed a matched file, but we'll cross-check fresh samples from both. For now, we can't conclude any real relation." I looked at Laverne, trying to read her eyes, fear, regret, and a quiet plea not to expose her. I asked, "And her motive?" Alvarez answered. Mariella said plainly, "I want the life I could never have. I'm tired of staring out of a shabby apartment window at that woman living in a warm house with someone who says that soft name Hank." My hands trembled. For a second, I felt anger and a strange pity, not just for Laverne but for myself. Pity, because it turns out all of us had been acting only at different levels of honesty. Laverne turned to me, voice breaking. "Please believe me. I didn't know she'd try to hurt you. I thought she would only help." "I swear, Hank." I looked at her a long time, then spoke slowly. "Laverne, what hurts isn't just that you lied. It's realizing that for years I left you so alone you felt you had to find someone else to stand in for yourself." She burst into tears, bent over the table, shoulders shaking. Alvarez gave a small nod, like she knew I'd finally said what I needed to say. Afterward, Alvarez walked me to the lot. She said, "Mr. Hank, we'll hold Mariella while we dig further. As it stands, she faces assault with a deadly weapon and attempted stale fraud. But I need to warn you, Mrs. Laverne may be called back to clarify her involvement. Please be ready." I nodded. "I'm not afraid of anything anymore, Detective." Driving back to Plano, Tanya asked softly, "Dad, are you angry at Mom?" I looked out where the sun was dropping, turning a row of old houses gold. "Of course, but I'm also angry at myself. I stayed silent so long the people beside me had to scream in the worst ways just to be seen. That night I sat alone on the porch. No rain, just light wind and damp wood. I thought about Mariella, about Laverne, and about me, three people tied in the same net of loneliness, pretense, and silence. I remembered Alvarez before she left. "This isn't over, Mr. Hank. When the DNA truth comes out, things may change." I don't know what change will mean, but I know this. From now on, I won't stay quiet. I won't let others define my life with lies wrapped in politeness. I took a deep breath, looked at a starless night, and said to myself, maybe to keep a little light, you've got to walk through the dark. And I understood my journey, to take back the truth, and maybe my self-respect had only begun. 3 days after Mariella's arrest, Alvarez called again. The case was widening, and she needed additional statements from both me and Laverne. Tanya drove me back to Houston. Reggie brought his mother in a separate car. It was the first time in weeks I saw Laverne in daylight, not in a hospital or an interview room. She wore a white blouse, hair pinned up, eyes swollen but still carrying that old pride. When our eyes met in the station lobby, she paused, then walked over. "Hank," she said quietly, "I need to speak with you alone." I nodded. We went to a bench under an old oak. Police cars hummed somewhere, steady like an old heart. She sat angled toward me, voice barely steady. "I've been thinking. About everything. What I did, and why. I stayed quiet and waited. You know, she looked down at her hands. A woman past 60, skin wrinkling, voice rougher, steps slower. People look at you different. To the world, you fade, like an old curtain everyone's used to but no one notices. But when those men paid not just to have me there, but to listen, to want me, to see me as a woman, I felt a little power again, a bit of light. I know it was wrong, but at least I felt I still existed. She lifted her eyes to mine, ashamed, defiant, and asking, "You don't look at me like that anymore, Hank. You see a housekeeper, a cook, a laundress." I forgot what it felt like to be wanted. I took a long breath, swallowing the lump. "What I need," I said slowly, "is a partner, not a stand-in. I don't need someone to be desired. I need the person beside me to live honestly with me, not to play a role." Laverne nodded through tears. "I know. I just don't know where to start again." We sat a long time. Maybe for the first time in decades, we spoke without blaming or dodging. I told her about the cold of our quiet, the loneliness between two people who knew each other best. She told me about fear, credit card debt, counting my pills at night, the humiliation of asking our son for roof money. "I didn't want pity," she said. "I wanted to feel I still had worth," I answered softly. "Your worth never lived in those men's eyes. It's in the years you and I beat back life together, raised kids, held the house. I just regret I didn't say it sooner." Back in the interview room, Tanya was waiting, a little brighter. "I booked a couples therapist for when the case cools down. No pressure, just to talk. Dad, Mom, try." I didn't answer right away. I set my hand on my daughter's shoulder. "We'll see, honey. Some cracks need time, not one session." She gave a sad smile. "As long as you're not saying, 'No, that's enough for me.'" The scene recreation happened 2 days, and later at my house where it all began. Alvarez came with a tech team. They photographed and measured the kitchen and basement, set the chair, the kettle, even the spot where I fell. "We need both of you for positions," Alvarez said. I stood by the counter. Laverne, standing in for Mariella, walked in from the back door. A forensics tech held a sealed wrench. "The attacker stood about here," he said, marking the floor with yellow tape. Alvarez studied the angles. Blow from behind on a rightward diagonal matches Mariella's right-hand dominance. Strong force, but not aimed at a killing point. She wanted him unconscious. I looked at the spot where I'd gone down. Paint still chipped. The night rushed back, the sharp cry, the chair tipping, the lights going out. I felt a chill, but a strange calm too. After measurements, Alvarez read the preliminary. "Based on physical evidence and statements, the DA has approved charges for second-degree attempted murder, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft. There are also identity misrepresentation and unlawful entry." Laverne sat, hands shaking. "I never thought she'd go that far. I just thought she'd help cover for me, not take my whole life." Alvarez nodded. "You can help by turning over every exchange with her emails, messages, and especially the client list she set up under Miss Celeste." Laverne pulled a packet from her bag with an old phone. "I kept it all, in case she threatened me." Alvarez took it with a thanks. Watching that, my chest felt heavy. There was something in Laverne's eyes, remorse and the collapse of someone finally owning their fault. When Alvarez slid the complaint for me to sign, my hand shook a bit. The pen was cold, the ink soaked in, each stroke pressed down. After signing, I said to Alvarez, "You know, I don't hate her. I hate the quiet that brought us here," Alvarez said softly. "Sometimes silence is more dangerous than lies, Mr. Hank." That night, back at Tanya's, she made simple dinner, butternut squash, soup and toast. Reggie took Laverne to his place 10 miles away. The house felt very still. After dinner, Tanya turned in early. I sat on the couch looking at an old photo, 1993, Lake Conroe. I'm in back, my arm around Laverne, Tanya on my forearm, Reggie grinning. The colors have faded, but our eyes are bright. I sighed and asked myself, what shape does forgiveness take? I don't know. Maybe it's a quiet nod when you look at the one who hurt you and don't feel anger anymore. Maybe it's when you understand forgiveness isn't erasing the past, it's stopping yourself from living in it. I didn't sleep. I just listened to the wind at the window. Images stacked up, Mariella bowing in the interview, Laverne crying under white light, Tanya's hand on my shoulder. Maybe after all this, what I need to learn isn't punishment, but how to live on with a past that won't change. And I realized grace isn't weakness. It's how you keep a little humanity after you've lost almost everything. I closed my eyes and told myself, tomorrow, if I wake up, I'll start learning it slowly, but for real. A week after the recreation, my phone rang before dawn. Detective Serena Alvarez again. Her voice was short but carried something new, not her usual certainty, but care mixed with regret. Mr. Hank, we've got the supplemental results from Lone Star Genomics. There's something you need to know. I sat up, heart thumping. Tanya was still asleep, so I stepped onto the porch, pulled on a sweater, leaned on the rail, and listened. Alvarez spoke slowly. The lab found irregularities in how the DNA samples from Mrs. Laverne and Miss Mariella Knox were processed. There are signs the data was tampered with specifically, changes made during the results entry stage, and the technician in charge at that time, a man named Eric Melton, had been disciplined in 2018 for a similar violation. I froze. You mean they're not twins? That's right, Alvarez answered, her voice firmer. Mariella was never biologically related to Mrs. Laverne. She exploited a loophole in the system and may have bribed or seduced that technician to falsify the result. I could hear the blood roaring in my ears. The so-called DNA miracle, the thing that made Laverne trust completely and open our home to a stranger, turned out to be a carefully calculated lie. At noon, Laverne came to see me at Tanya's. The moment she stepped in, she looked at me with red, lost eyes. I just heard from Alvarez. Her voice was hoarse. There's no twin, no one. I believed. I opened the door. I brought her into our home like family. I pulled out a chair and asked her to sit. The air between us was so thick and heavy, even the wall clock sounded like it was pounding on my chest. She clasped her hands so tightly, her nails dug into her skin. I was foolish, Hank. When she said we had the same genes, the same birth year, the same little mole, I felt like I'd found a missing piece. I believed because I wanted to believe. I thought God had sent her to fill the hole in me. But it was the devil. I looked at that withered face and remembered the nights she sat in the basement knitting, thinking she was in control while she was being led. You're not the only one who got fooled, I said quietly. She knew how to hit people where they're weak. Nobody wants to be alone. Laverne broke down. But the price I paid was you, the trust of our whole family. I said nothing. I just sat there and listened. Sometimes the right silence soothes more than any words. That afternoon, Alvarez called again to say Mariella had handwritten a letter to her attorney in jail. I'm sending you a copy, she said. But be prepared, the content is heavy. The letter began in a wobbly scrawl, slanting as if the writer's mind was skidding off the edge of sanity. I was never a twin. I was born with a face people wanted to forget. My whole life I've searched for people who looked like me so I could feel I existed. Laverne was the perfect replica. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted to live once in someone else's light. Below that, Mariella added a small line, almost a bargain. If I expose the entire client network, I want leniency. And please, don't publicize her private life. She's suffered enough. When Alvarez forwarded the email to me, she added, the DA has received it but rejected any negotiation. They consider attempted murder and intentional fraud to be felonies. There's no pretty deal here. I stayed quiet for a long time. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a deep, bare sadness, like ash after a big fire. That evening, Tanya arranged a small family prayer at a little church near Plano. No announcements, just 5 of us. Me, Laverne, Tanya, Reggie, and Jaden. The old silver-haired pastor sat across from us, his voice low and warm. Sometimes, forgiveness isn't to put others at ease. It's to let yourself rest. I didn't answer. I just watched the candles flicker on the altar. Laverne sat beside me, hand on a rosary, lips moving in a whisper. I didn't hold her hand, but I didn't pull away either. I simply let the space be a temporary pause of mercy. After the service, Tanya said softly, "You don't have to say anything, Dad. I can see your eyes are different today." I smiled faintly, but my chest felt like lead. A few days later, Alvarez scheduled a final meeting at the station to complete the witness protection paperwork. She said, "We advise you both to change every lock, delete all digital accounts tied to the old client network, and change your personal phone numbers. Don't let anyone approach you under the name Celeste's friend." Laverne nodded. "I'll do it, right away. I don't want to hear that name again." I cut in, "What about the money she earned before?" Alvarez opened the file. "There's about $38,000 left in the account. On paper, it's legal, but given the circumstances, you can petition the court to freeze it or convert it into a family fund." I turned to Laverne. "Are you willing?" She was quiet for a beat, then nodded, tired but resolute. "I don't want to keep a single dollar of it. Call it wrong money if you want. If you agree, use it to set up a small family fund, fully transparent, so our grandchildren know that what's hidden can still be turned into light." I looked at her for a long time, then signed the consent in front of Alvarez. She gave a slight smile. "Then justice is being put back where it belongs, not just in the law, but in people's hearts." That night, after we got home, I sat by the window listening to crickets in the yard. Laverne had gone to stay with Tanya for the time being. I looked at the chair across from me where she used to read her Bible every night. Now it was empty, with only the desk lamp casting light on our yellowed wedding photo. In the photo I was younger, more sure of myself, and Laverne was smiling, the smile of someone who didn't know one day her life would skid into a swamp of lies and fear. I sighed, poured a little bourbon, and stared outside. Maybe the DNA thread we thought tied those 2 women together never existed. What tangled everything wasn't in their genes, it was the hunger to belong. I took a small sip, the burn spreading down my throat. Tomorrow the new locks would go in, the passwords would change, and that house, the one that once echoed with a wrench hitting the floor, would be sealed with a new quiet. But I knew that deep down there would still be stitches that never fully close, and maybe learning to live with them instead of trying to erase them is the real kind of forgiveness. I have to practice every day. That morning, Houston poured rain again, thick and gray, like the sky was tired of the long, dragging case. I was making coffee in the kitchen when the phone vibrated. Detective Serena Alvarez. Her voice was rough, slow, unlike usual. "Mr. Hank, Mariella Knox is dead in her cell. We suspect suicide." I stood still. Coffee drops hit the tile, dark brown like dried blood. I couldn't say a word. I just heard the rain hammering the roof, heavy and hard. Alvarez paused, then continued. "She left a note. In it, Mariella apologizes to you, takes full responsibility, and admits that everything from the DNA test to the stand-in act was staged by her." I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "You're saying she planned it all?" "Yes," she wrote. "She falsified the DNA by going through the back door with the lab tech. The real plan wasn't just pretending to be a twin. Mariella admitted she intended to remove you first, then Laverne, assume the identity, sell the house, and drain your pension." Alvarez lowered her voice. "The letter also mentions a man, the blue suit guy you and Jaden saw on the Bayou Palms footage. She calls him Raymond, a regular who knew a bit about your deed and accounts. We're looking for him." I heard every word, but my heart still refused to believe it. That someone could be so cold to pose as family, steal a name, and plan to take over two old people's lives. When I told Laverne, she collapsed into a chair, tears falling without sound. Her whole body shook as if wind had blown straight through her. I sat across from her and watched her cupped hands tremble. "She died?" "Yes," I said. "The letter apologizes to you too. She says she truly grew fond of you but didn't know where to stop." Laverne buried her face in her hands and sobbed silently. It reminded me of old funerals where the living cry not only for the dead, but for the part of themselves that just died too. I felt no joy, no triumph, only mourning, a death like a cold period that ends a string of lies yet opens a void no one wants to touch. That afternoon, Alvarez came by the house. Her coat was soaked, rain and paperwork scents mixed together. She put an envelope on the table. "This is a copy of the suicide note. I need your signature confirming you've read it." I opened it. The handwriting leaned, the paper stained by tears or rain I couldn't tell. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hank. I went too far. I wanted to live a life that wasn't mine, a life with a house, and someone saying that tender name. I thought acting was enough, but the longer I lived it, the more I believed I was her. When you looked at me with suspicion, I panicked. I only wanted you quiet for a while so I could leave Houston." I paused, then read the end. "If there's a next life, please don't hate me. I only wanted someone to believe I was worthy of love. Spare Laverne, she didn't. Know everything. All the fault is mine." I folded the letter and sat in silence for a long time. The house was still, except for the clock and my heavy breathing. Alvarez spoke softly. "Since the primary suspect is deceased, the main criminal case will close, but the file on the blue suit guy stays open. HPD and CBP are reviewing cameras along the McAllen corridor. We'll keep you updated." I nodded and said quietly, "Thank you, Alvarez. Maybe justice finds its way in the end, even if slow, even if it hurts." She gave a small, sad nod. "Justice is late sometimes, but it doesn't forget." A few days later, the DA officially closed the attempted murder charges against Mariella Knox, moving the file to case concluded due to suspect's death. At the same time, they issued a warrant for the blue suit man who may have helped her manipulate the deed. The media picked it up, but only from the public summary. They wrote that a Houston woman posed as a twin to seize assets. I got a few calls from reporters asking about the tragic story of an elderly couple. I turned them all down. I told Alvarez, "Keep Laverne's private life out of the news. She did wrong, but she still deserves a last piece of dignity." She said, "I promise." A week later, we held a family meeting at Tanya's. For the first time after all the storms, the four of us, me, Laverne, Tanya, and Reggie, sat around one table and no one looked away. Tanya began, "Dad, I'm sorry. We were careless. You carried too much, and we thought you were strong and didn't need care." Reggie followed, voice tight. "I'm sorry too, Dad. I know there were times I blamed you for being cold to Mom, but now I get it. Sometimes a man stays quiet not because he doesn't care, but because he's trying to keep the house from breaking." I looked at my children, my throat closing. All those years I was afraid to show weakness, afraid they'd see me tired. Now that my hair is white, I finally understand. Strength isn't hiding feelings, it's admitting you've been hurt. I opened my arms and pulled both Tanya and Reggie close. "We all messed up somewhere," I said. "But the fact we're still sitting here means we still have a chance to fix it." The three of us hugged. I heard Tanya sniffle, and Reggie patted my back real and steady. Laverne sat quietly, tears streaming. "When we let go," she said softly, "I think I should leave the house for a while, not run, just space to think, to find my faith again." I looked at her and nodded. "I understand. I need quiet too. I'll move in with Tanya for a while. When we're both ready, we'll talk again. No rush, no pretending. She nodded, lips pressed together, and said nothing more. In her eyes, I could see it clearly. Sometimes stepping apart isn't the end. It's the only way to begin again. That night, in the small room at Plano, I opened the old leather notebook I'd used since the steel mill days. I wrote slowly, each word hammered into the page. Rebuilding needs three things: time, truth, boundaries. I closed the notebook and looked out at the night. The rain still fell, sparse and cold, but unlike before, I didn't feel weighed down. Maybe because in that darkness I knew one thing for sure: truth, even late, is the only light strong enough to bring people home. And I told myself that tomorrow, when the sun comes up, when the locks are changed, when the house is calm again, I'll make coffee, sit down and start a new page. No perfect ending needed, just honesty. May drifted by slowly, carrying the smell of fresh grass and softer mornings after the rains. I started taking morning walks around Plano, a paved loop under old oaks where a few old men chat about gas prices and weather. At first, just a few hundred steps, then nearly 2 miles each morning. I took my meds on time, ate properly, and worked in Tanya's backyard. Touching soil, the thing I'd forgotten after decades with steel, brought a strange calm. Every time I watered the plants, it felt like watering the dry parts of myself. Tanya would step onto the porch now and then with a coffee, teasing, "At this rate, Dad, give it a few months and you'll be healthier than when you took early retirement." I laughed, wiping sweat. "I just want to see if old folks can sprout again." 3 weeks after we separated, Laverne and I started meeting once a week at a small cafe near Street Paul's. We set our own rules. No lies, no dodging. The first time, we sat across from each other with the smell of roast beans and the faint clink of spoons. Laverne's hair was pinned back, gray jacket, thinner face, eyes less vacant. I opened. "I don't know where to start. Sometimes I feel there's nothing left to say, but if we stay quiet, we'll go back to the same place." She nodded. "Me too. I'm afraid saying it out loud will hurt you again, but keeping it in will choke me." We spoke about what neither of us had ever dared to say. I told her there were long years when I felt invisible, like I was a shadow passing through my own life. I said it slowly but firmly. "I felt myself fading in your eyes. I lived with you, but I wasn't seen." Laverne looked up, eyes wet. "And me," she whispered. "I only felt I existed when someone listened. When they paid for me to sit, talk, laugh, even though I knew it was a transaction. I hated myself, but at least then I felt I had worth." I didn't answer right away. I touched my cooling cup. Maybe people go astray not out of desire, but because they haven't heard their own voice in their own house for too long. After a few meetings, Tanya suggested couples therapy. I agreed, not because I believed in miracles, but to see if there was anything left to save. In the first session, the counselor, a warm-voiced woman with brown skin, asked, "What are you two looking for by still showing up?" I looked at Laverne and said, "We're not trying to get back the years we lost. We want to learn how not to kill the years we have left with silence." The room went quiet. Laverne cried, and for the first time in months I saw her eyes without armor. The next Sunday, the church hosted a marriage recovery group, couples who had broken and were trying to mend. We joined, said nothing, and listened. A silver-haired man shared how he'd cheated for 10 years and only realized when his wife got cancer that betrayal doesn't kill a marriage as fast as the silence that follows. The line touched my wound. When it ended, Laverne lightly took my hand without a word. The touch felt like an apology, and I didn't pull away. We started rebuilding with new rules. I proposed an open pension fund, a joint account with monthly income expense reports, fully transparent. Laverne didn't object. "I'm tired of hiding," she said. "From now on, everything stands in the light." I nodded. To me, it wasn't just money, it was relearning trust. At the same time, I set clear safety boundaries, cameras at the back door, all new locks, and an alarm system. When the installers finished, I sat on the porch watching the status light blink. For the first time in months, I felt truly at ease, not because of stronger locks, but because I'd learned that boundaries aren't for dividing, they're for protecting. One morning, Alvarez called. "Update, Mr. Hank. We arrested the blue suit guy, real name Raymond Lyles. He's charged with money laundering but denies involvement in the assault. He claims he was just a regular client in Mariella's circle, knew a bit about the deed but never executed any plan." I simply said, "Thank you." She paused, then added, "And one more thing. Someone sent you a letter, no name, just signed a former client at Bayou Palms. There are a few checks inside." I received the envelope the next day. Inside was a folded note and 5 checks, totaling $3,500. "I can't use my real name, but I owe you an apology. I was one of the men who paid Miss Celeste. I didn't know the truth until I saw the news. This money won't erase anything, but please put it to something good." I didn't think long. The next morning, I sent all of it to Amari's medical fund, my grandson's knee treatment, the very reason Laverne slid down the wrong path. Tanya hugged me, eyes wet. "I think Amari will grow up knowing his grandpa taught him what matters most, how to turn guilt into good." One weekend night, I went back to the old house to grab a few things. In a drawer, I found a handwritten note from Laverne. Cream paper, her letter shaky but clear. "Hank, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I just want to thank you for not despising me. If someday you don't choose me, I'll still be grateful for having been your wife. Thank you for giving me a chance to start over, even if it isn't beside you." I folded it and slipped it into my pocket. Out on the porch, I sat in the old wooden chair where we used to watch sunsets in the early years. The wood was rough and the paint peeling, but it still held. I ran my hand along it like touching my own life, cracked, worn, but strong enough to carry weight. A light breeze brought the smell of damp earth. I closed my eyes and thought, maybe forgiveness isn't forgetting. Maybe it's sitting back down knowing the cracks are still there and facing the sun together. I opened my eyes to a pale orange sky. Tomorrow, we'd meet at that little cafe again. I don't know the future, but at least today I know I'm living right, not invisible, not silent. And in that moment I realized, rebuilding a marriage is like fixing the old porch chairs. You don't need them brand new, just sturdy enough for 2 people to sit side by side and watch a quiet evening without fear of breaking. The following March, when Houston eased into gentle sun, I returned to the house in Independence Heights. The air felt different than last year. No damp basement smell, no eerie creak of the rocker. Just a light breeze and daylight through the curtains, like the house wanted to breathe again. Tanya drove me back, half joking. "I knew you wouldn't stay with me forever. But remember, conditional truce, not rushing back to the way things were." I smiled. "I'm old. I only have the strength to live like a decent man." I moved into a separate room upstairs, keeping just enough distance. Laverne stayed downstairs, still cooked, still kept a few basil pots on the porch, but without forcing touches or pretending nothing happened. We both understood what we needed wasn't to start over, but to learn how to share a space without hurting each other again. We set new rules, short, clear, and written out on a sheet of paper taped to the fridge. Wednesday, talk for 30 minutes, no interrupting, no judging. Sunday, walk for 20 minutes around the park, no phones. If angry, say it straight, no silent treatment. I remember the first night of Wednesday dialogues clearly. The table had just 2 dishes, roasted salmon and steamed green beans. Laverne poured me a glass of lemonade, then sat down. No background music, no dim lights, just 2 old people facing each other, talking about the things we'd avoided for 40 years. I told her about my steel years, morning shifts that started at 4:30, late nights coming home, sweat drying into salt on my shirt. I admitted that for years I never truly listened. I only provided, thinking silence was love. I thought keeping quiet would protect you from worry, I said, but it only made you feel alone. Laverne lowered her head. After a moment, she told me about the loneliest night of her life, her 60th birthday. I sat alone in the kitchen, lit a single candle on a small cake. You were asleep on the sofa with the TV still on. I looked at you and felt like I was looking at a stranger. I just wanted someone to ask, "Are you okay?" But no one did. I was stunned. Between two people who had shared a bed for 4 decades, there were years when we couldn't reach each other with even a single question. The next week, we cleaned out the basement, the place that held the memory of the rubber mallet night, where I fell under betrayal and deceit. I thought I would shake, struggle to breathe. But strangely, when I stepped down, I saw only light. We threw the old rocking chair into the trash, replaced the bulbs with brighter ones, and opened the window to let the breeze in. The smell of damp wood and dust faded, replaced by the scent of fresh soap. Laverne took the broom. I took the rags. When I wiped the corner where the old bloodstain had been, I paused and said softly, "Now it's just a patch of paint." She answered in a low voice, "Yeah, we deserve a house that doesn't hold shadows." That line made me feel lighter. It was as if we'd restored fairness to this house once a battleground, now allowed to be a home again. On Sunday, we walked around the park. Gentle sunlight lay over her silver hair. The smell of new grass and the sound of children laughing circled the lake. I slowly told Laverne about those early years of marriage, how I used to watch her sing to Tanya, how proud I felt and never said it. She just smiled and said, "It's not too late to say it now." That afternoon, I fixed our silver bracelet, the 1979 wedding keepsake, onto the frame of our wedding photo on the wooden table. The silver glinted against our young faces in the picture. I said quietly to myself, "There was a time I forgot. Now I won't." One April morning, Jaden called, voice bubbling with excitement. "Grandpa, I just applied to study law criminal litigation. I want to be a prosecutor," I asked, half joking. "Since when did you want to stand with the law instead of engineering?" He laughed through the phone. "Since your story. I learned that sometimes a verdict isn't only punishment, it's a chance for people to look at themselves." I smiled, lifted my head, and felt the blood in my heart running strong. Maybe every wound, told the right way, can become a seed for the next generation. A few weeks later, Laverne suggested joining a church program supporting older women in medical debt. "I think I can listen to them," she said, "because I know what it feels like to be pushed to the edge." I looked at her and saw no more self-pity in her eyes, only a will to make amends. I nodded. "Do it. But take care of your strength. We go slow now, none of us have anything left to prove." She smiled. "Soft boundaries, right?" "Yeah," I said. "Soft, but clear enough to know the line." In June, our family had a dry supper, no alcohol, just grilled meat, salad, and apple pie. No music, no gifts, just laughter. Reggie talked about work. Tanya talked about Amari learning piano. When it was my turn, I simply said, "Thank you for still being here." No one added anything. We just hugged for a long time before heading out. I felt the warmth of those hugs, the warmth I once thought we'd never get back. That night I sat on the porch, the 2 old wooden chairs still there. I drank tea instead of bourbon and listened to crickets in the yard. Inside, I wasn't angry at anyone anymore. Not at Mariella, not at Laverne, not at myself. Only a quiet deep enough to look back at the whole road without choking. I thought about the question that haunted me for a year. What is forgiveness? And for the first time I understood. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is letting the past stop making your choices for you. I looked up at Houston's calm night sky. The breeze carried jasmine from the back garden light, and clear like a prayer. At 70, I don't promise to live forever. I promise to live true, to speak when it needs to be said, to love when I still can, and to be silent only when peace requires it. I nudged the chair and heard the familiar creak of wood. Laverne stepped out with 2 cups of hot tea. I added honey, the way you like. I took it and smiled. Thanks. Sit. Night's falling. 2 old people sat together on the porch, between the jasmine and the breeze, neither saying another word. And in that moment I realized some promises don't need to be spoken. Sitting side by side is keeping them. That August, Houston blazed like it had never known rain. After nearly a year of storms, Laverne and I decided to hold a small family ceremony, not a renewal of vows, but a trade of promises. We agreed. We wouldn't erase the past or repaint old cracks. We'd simply learn to lay a hand over the scar and see it as a true part of our lives. The ceremony was on the porch, the same place that had seen many silent nights and many mornings of starting over. Tanya set white chrysanthemums in a clay vase. Reggie brought a small speaker and played light jazz. On the table sat our faded wedding photo, my notebook, and 2 cups of hot tea. I wore a light blue shirt. Laverne wore a beige linen dress. No makeup, just a small flower pinned in her hair, gentle and real. When Tanya asked if we planned to read vows like a wedding, I said, "No, just say what we dare to do differently." I stood before everyone, speaking slowly and clearly. I promise to speak plainly when I'm hurting, to not turn to stone in silence. I promise not to let fear make me harm others. I won't pretend to be strong when I'm not. I'll let people know when I need help. I turned to Laverne. She smiled faintly, put a hand to her chest, and said, "As for me, I promise to ask for help when I'm weak, not sell myself to outrun debt. I won't trade love for the feeling of being seen. I promise to tell the truth even when I'm afraid to lose. And I won't run away by being silent anymore." 2 old people stood there under the familiar wooden eave, the gold light falling through the thin curtain. No fireworks, no new rings, just a breeze, and the sound of 2 people finally daring to tell the truth after a lifetime of quiet. When we finished, Tanya pulled out a printed sheet titled Coleman Family Accord, 2026. Below were 4 points our children wrote together. 1. All major family expenses must be transparent and openly discussed. 2. When in trouble, ask for help, no hiding, no secret debts. 3. Do not use our parents' names to borrow, invest, or hold title. 4. Once a year, the family will meet not to talk about blame, but about what we've learned. Tanya handed me the pen. I signed first, then Laverne, then our 2 kids. When the pen touched paper, I felt like a burden slid off. 4 people, 4 signatures. No lawyers or notaries, just the awareness that kinship needs rules to stay safe. Reggie grinned. "Never thought I'd see the day our family signed a co-living contract," I said. "Sometimes peace needs a peace treaty." A few days later, I stopped by HPD to thank Detective Alvarez. She met me in the lobby, neat as ever in a dark blue suit. "Mr. Hank, doing better?" she half-joked. I raised my brown leather notebook. "Thanks to you. I've learned to write whenever my head wants to scream." Alvarez laughed. "So the grandpa keeps a journal now. Good, if someone reads it someday, they'll know truth isn't only in police files." I shook her hand. "Thank you for believing an old man when no one else would." She nodded, her eyes kinder than I'd ever seen. Sometimes my job isn't catching criminals, it's helping people believe they still deserve to live decently. That evening, when I got home, Amari, my younger grandson, ran out to the porch with a fistful of crayons. "Grandpa, tell me about the steel mill." I sat in the wooden chair and smiled. "Which one, the stainless hanger or the M16 bolt story?" "Both," he squealed. I started, adding a little drama like a movie narrator. "Back in the day at Bayport Steel, they called me Iron Hank. Once, the stainless hanger jammed and the whole line had to stop. I used a single hammer and two M16 bolts to save the day. Amari doubled over, laughing, eyes bright. Tanya watched from the doorway, smiling. I realized that when you retell your life lightly, old wounds aren't so scary anymore. One morning in mid-September, I sat writing letters to old mill friends. "Fellas," I wrote, "don't wait for a funeral to meet. Come over this summer for barbecue." I got a new gas grill and a few stories left untold. I sealed the envelopes and dropped them in the box down the street. It felt like sending out a piece of the past, knowing it would find its way back in laughter. A few weeks later, Laverne suggested, "How about a little trip close by? Port Aransas, maybe. Shallow water, gentle wind. Just a weekend." I hesitated a second, then nodded. "All right, the beach I can do, but no dune climbs, no speedboats." She laughed. "All I need is you sitting beside me, listening to the waves." It was a short trip, but it mattered. We sat on the sand with our feet in the cool water, watching the sunset turn bronze. No talk of the past, no apologies, just quiet, letting the wind and waves speak for us. On the way back, Laverne bought a little wind chime at a roadside shop and said, "I want to hang it on the porch. Let the wind carry off what heaviness is left." Back home, I helped her hang it on the beam. It chimed softly in the breeze, clear and new, like a child's first laugh after a long sickness. That night, I sat alone on the porch with my notebook open. The warm lamp lit the page where I'd written hundreds of lines through a year of upheaval. I wrote slowly, big and clear, like carving into wood. Storms don't end because the sky changes, but because we learn to shelter together. I closed the notebook and looked up at Houston's calm sky. Laverne came out and set a hand on my shoulder. "What'd you write?" "The new title of the notebook," I said with a smile. The wind blew. The chimes sang bright notes, mixing with our quiet laughter. I realized, no storm lasts forever if two people will sit together and relearn how to hold hands while the thunder is still far off. That night, Houston stayed dry. And I knew the storm in my life had ended too. 2 years after the upheaval, I'm 73 and Laverne is 69. We aren't perfect, but we're brave enough to live honestly, no pretending to be strong, no lipstick over old cracks. The house in Independence Heights is the same. Red roof, worn steps, a wind chime that sings whenever the Houston breeze passes. But now that sound doesn't make me sad. It feels like new breath in an old life light, true and calm enough. In the morning, I wake at 6 a.m., make coffee, and open the window to the sky. Laverne is usually in the garden with cloth gloves on, a calm on her face I once thought we'd lost for good. We don't talk much, but when our eyes meet, I know it's no longer the silence of distance, but the quiet of people who have lived through storms. Every Wednesday, we still keep our talk hour. Sometimes it's only small things. I lost my keys again. She burned the toast. Or Tanya sent a photo of Amari playing basketball. Once I asked, "Do you think we've truly forgiven each other?" She looked at me and answered softly, "Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to stay, even knowing the other still has flaws." I nodded because that's how I live too. Some afternoons I think back to Jaden's rainstorm call, the call that changed everything. If he hadn't called that day, I might still be living in lies, still believing every creak of the basement rocker was real, and still thinking my life had drifted along just fine. I'm grateful to Jaden not only for helping me see the truth, but because that call saved the soul of a family rotting in silence. When Jaden visits, I make 2 iced coffees the way he likes and ask about law school. He says he's interning at the DA's office, focusing on elder abuse cases. I laugh and say, now I can rest easy. If someone scams me someday, I probably get a free lawyer. Jaden bursts out laughing. "No one would dare, Grandpa. I already told your story to the whole class." Some nights when the city is quiet, I still think of Mariella Knox. No anger, no fear, just a touch of sorrow. A life strayed by the hunger to be somebody, ending in disappearance instead of a way back. I hope she rests somewhere without the shadows of envy and isolation. In a way, she was the mirror that made me see myself that every lie begins when people are afraid to live true. I wrote a few lines for older folks like me, those living in houses with thick walls of silence. Don't stay silent, I wrote. Silence is fertile ground for lies to grow. Speak even if your voice shakes, even if tears fall. Truth doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be heard. I realized love after 70 isn't dreamy. It's gentle discipline, the talk hour on the fridge, the hand you hold when the other is tired, the steady gaze when one of you is hurting. Above all, it's choosing to stay, even knowing life isn't long. On the living room wall, I hung our wedding photo beneath the silver bracelet not to wear, but to see every day. The silver catches the afternoon light and falls across our younger faces, naive and clumsy, not yet knowing how long and uneven the road would be. I don't try to forget the wayward years, because they prove that love means something only when it's tested. On our 45th anniversary, Tanya and Reggie brought everyone for dinner on the porch. The Houston breeze carried the smell of old rain. The wind chime rang with the sizzle of the grill. Amari darted around with an old camera, clicking non-stop and yelling, "Smile, Grandma and Grandpa." I turned to Laverne, at her lined but warm face, and said softly, "Afraid the wind might take it away. Thank you for still sitting next to me." She squeezed my hand and smiled. "We're not afraid of rain anymore, are we?" I nodded. "That's right, the storm has passed, and that blue sky is the reward for those who stayed after it. Now, whenever I sit on the porch, I listen to the chime and think about all I've learned about forgiveness, courage, and how to love again someone who once hurt you. I'm writing this not to claim anything, but to remind myself and anyone listening. It's never too late to start living true. One sentence, one hand held, or one afternoon, without avoiding enough to change the wind. If you've listened this far, thank you for staying with me to the very end. I don't know what city you're in, or whether you're hearing this on a warm morning or a windy night, but I hope that somewhere in these words you find a piece of yourself, a pain already past, a silence that once swallowed you, or simply the longing to be heard. If anything in this story touched your heart, please leave me a comment just so I know you're still here, that an old man's stories can still find their way to someone out there. And if you believe stories like this deserve to travel farther, please hit like, share, or subscribe so I can keep telling you about real people and real feelings, sometimes sharp, but always aiming for healing.